I thank the chair and I thank the witnesses for being here today to discuss these two pieces of legislation. While I share the administration's concerns with these two bills, I'd like to commend the sponsors for acknowledging the fact that we are in the middle of an unprecedented oil and gas boom in this country, and that with the boom come challenges that need to be addressed. The BP Statistical Review of World Energy put it earlier this week, the U.S. increase in 2013 was one of the biggest oil production increases the world has ever seen, end quote. That kind of production increase is going to create problems, and there will be conflicts with landowners, increased truck traffic in rural areas, concerns about air and water quality, induced earthquakes from wastewater injection, questions about health and safety. This sort of production boom doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in people's towns, off their shores, sometimes right in their backyards. So whether it's the fact that the natural gas is being flared at unacceptable rates in North Dakota, or companies are trying to expand pipelines to carry all their new supplies, there are problems that Congress should be debating and addressing. Now, of course, some of the legislation that we've had here in Congress really ignores the fact that we're producing at a near record clip. And next week, the House is scheduled to debate yet another bill that would force land sales off the coasts and do other such things, and is even more obsolete and unnecessary this year than it was last year when House Republicans forced it through to no effect, or the year before when they did the same thing. This legislation this kind of legislation exists in a fantasy land where President Obama is somehow shutting down U.S. energy production, not in the real world where we're the #1 producer of natural gas and soon to be the #1 producer of oil. But on the bills we're here to talk about today, as I said, I want to give credit to the sponsors for finding, or at least seeking, solutions to real problems. I don't believe that these bills would be the right solutions. H.R. 1587 would take the responsibility for approving oil and gas pipelines through the national parks away from Congress, hand it to the National Park Service, and it's a responsibility they don't want, and they have said so. When Congress, and that they are not best suited to carry out. When Congress amended the Mineral Leasing Act of 1973 to allow land managers to site oil and gas pipelines on their lands, it specifically carved out the Outer Continental Shelf and Indian lands, which were both covered by their own laws. Congress retained the authority to site pipelines in the national parks. It wasn't an oversight or a mistake. It was deliberate, and I believe with good reason. Congress has repeatedly and in a timely manner passed laws to authorize oil and gas pipelines through national parks, and I believe our parks are too precious a resource for us simply to abandon our responsibility in that matter. The other bill we're discussing today, H.R. 4293, would create a new statutory categorical exclusion to accelerate the siting of natural gas gathering lines in an attempt to cut down on flaring. Now, I appreciate the goal of the legislation, but I believe it's the wrong way to go about it. Congress enacted 5 categorical exclusions in the Republican-led Energy Policy Act of 2005, and those have created enormous problems, according to the Government Accountability Office. In particular, these exclusions don't even allow land managers to look for special circumstances that may make them inappropriate in a given situation. Legislative categorical exclusions are really clumsy tools that create more harm than good, and I believe we should be repealing the ones from 2005, not creating new ones. Now, more fundamentally, I simply haven't seen any evidence that the environmental review process for natural gas gathering lines is in any way responsible for the incredible amounts of flaring in North Dakota. And without that evidence, this bill appears to be a classic example of a solution in search of a problem, or perhaps an attempt to accomplish some ideological end unrelated to the problem at hand. So with that, I'd like to thank the witnesses, and I'd also like to ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to include 2 items in the record: a letter from the Wilderness Society stating their concerns about H.R. 1587, and a document from the Clean Air Task Force entitled "A Close Look at Natural Gas Flaring in North Dakota."
With no objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
I would now recognize the author